Authority's new Take Credit Mortgage Credit Certificate Program. We are very excited to be offering this great new program to Iowans, and it's just in the form of a tax credit direct from Federal Treasury, and we're thrilled that you're interested in partnering with us to make this possible. I'm Deb Hauk. I'm the Director of Single Family Production for IFA, and I have with me today Sherry Crone, our Single Family Program Manager, and Beth Mahaffey, our Business Development Director. The three of us are going to share the presenting responsibility today, and we'll all be on hand at the conclusion of the presentation to answer any of your questions. Before I get started, though, I wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. First, I've been asked to alert everyone to the fact that IFA, or the state in general, has been experiencing some interruptions in our telecommunication systems today. So if you do happen to lose contact with us at any point during this presentation, just please feel free to hang up and dial in again and pick up where you left off. And if you do lose just the sound or some other portion, the audio portion has been a little dicey at times, just send us a little message here through your online system, and we will be having someone monitor those through the chat system here to pick up any loss of audio for you. But not to be concerned if you do, for whatever reason, cut out and are not able to rejoin. We will be recording this. It is recorded right now. And so after the presentation is complete, we will be posting it on our website for you to listen to at your convenience later. So hopefully we will cover all those bases, and no one will miss out on any important information. And just to know that we apologize in advance if you do experience any problems. So with that, we will cross our fingers and hope all goes smoothly, and if this whole speech was unnecessary. But I will start then on the presentation. Okay. Yeah, can we minimize that? So today, the session we are offering is a webinar on the Take Credit program, and it is really geared towards lenders who are interested in offering the Take Credit program to their customers. I know there may be some other folks out there just interested and curious about the process, but keep in mind that this is meant to provide lenders information that can help them just to get started identifying what borrowers will qualify for this benefit, and then be able to take those initial steps to reserve funds and qualify buyers. And the presentation today is really just meant to cover the basics. So we won't be attempting to cover every possible scenario that you would encounter in the course of administering an MCC. So there will be likely times in the future, if you do take on the program, that you encounter situations that we don't cover here today. And just be assured that, even if you have an active file now that you're working through and thinking about as we talk, there may be things we don't cover, but we will be ready. Our staff is ready and prepared to help you and walk you through the unique situations that you encounter. And this, just thought, would be more productive if we focus on sort of your basic level information. But with that caveat, we do have a full agenda. We will be talking about what the program is and how it benefits your borrowers. We'll discuss the overall eligibility for the program, describe the compliance review process that we're putting in place, lender record keeping and recording responsibilities, and also compensation for lenders. So following this part of the presentation, we will then offer a quick demonstration of our Lender Online, which is our online reservation system, as we set it up to receive requests for mortgage credit certificates under the Take Credit program. So I do expect that our prepared remarks will take about an hour, and then hopefully you will have blocked out enough time to stick around, because we will open it up for questions at the conclusion. And sometimes I found that the best information comes out during that stage of the review. So hopefully you won't miss it, but if you do, again, just feel free to come back and listen in on it once it's posted on our website. So I would like to give you just an overarching sense of what the Take Credit program is. We are planning to launch it starting in January. For loan closings after January 1st, we'll be able to be issued mortgage credit certificates for those that have qualified. IFA has offered a mortgage credit certificate program in the past, and for those of you that have been around long enough in the industry, you may remember from the mid-90s. So this is kind of a new old idea, and in fact, IFA has had this capacity to offer a program under the same section of the tax code that allows us to issue tax-exempt bonds for first mortgage financing. So it's a different use of that same resource, and what you'll come to understand, the reason why I want to frame it that way is so that you understand that the MCC, or the Mortgage Credit Certificate, is really subject to the same exact qualification requirements as our First Home program in terms of income eligibility, home buyer qualification, and purchase price limits. So it will look very much the same to you, and the reason is that it's really provided for as part of the same part of the tax code as our traditional financing tools. So with that, the reassurance here is that you will probably not find this all that new and different. It will be pretty easy for you, those of you that have worked with our programs in the past. We have to set aside a certain amount of capacity, so there is a limited amount of capacity for the program, and we think based on our current average loan amounts that it would be enough to serve about 1,000 home buyers. And we have to use it before the end of 2014. So we have 2 years in which to use it, and if it's not used or exhausted at that point, it goes away, it expires. So we want to make the full use of this federal resource for Iowans. What is a mortgage credit certificate, and why would your borrower want one? Well, it is simply a tax credit taken against a borrower's federal income tax liability, and the amount that they can take as a tax credit is capped at $2,000, and the exact amount is based on a percentage of the mortgage interest that they paid in a given tax year. IFA has, under the tax code, the ability to set a credit rate between 10 and 50%, and we have, in our policy, and our board has approved us to max that out at the highest amount possible of 50% of the mortgage interest paid, again, with a cap of $2,000. It's good for a credit that can be taken each year for the life of the loan, up to 30 years. And just back of the envelope calculation, what it really has the effect of is creating just an enhanced level of affordability for our borrowers, in that if you take into account that credit, their effective interest rate is currently under 2%. So that's really never been a more affordable time to purchase a home, and it's a great value for first-time buyers. I do also want to point out that under some limited circumstances, the mortgage credit certificate can be transferred by the holder to another, it's transferred to a purchaser of their home at sale. That's only in the instance that a buyer is assuming the mortgage from the existing credit holder, and in those instances, IFA actually has to qualify the new owner and then issue a new certificate to the new owner. But it is possible in some instances to transfer that benefit at the time of the sale. So a borrower should know that, and it could be used as a great selling point. Additionally, these mortgage credit certificates can be reissued at a time of refinance that we are currently doing for our programs we had previously. So we do see that, and some of you may be familiar with that process, but that's just demonstrating the longevity and the durability of this benefit. It really can help homeowners long term. And then the other thing that's not listed here, but just a point of note, is that some people are concerned about the fact that borrowers at a more modest income may not have a tax liability to take advantage. And I just want to point out that under the guidelines, there is a 3-year carry-forward provision. So if a borrower in the first year didn't have enough liability, they could carry that credit amount forward for up to 3 years. So how does the borrower get the credit? Well, they get it in much the same way that they get any of the other program benefits that IFA offers for single family. They work through our network of participating lenders, apply for their financing. The lender then collects the documentation, application for financing, and submits all the eligibility and any fees to IFA electronically through our lender online system. IFA reviews the documentation, and upon approval will issue that mortgage credit certificate directly to the borrower after the closing, and after the closing documents have been reviewed. A copy will go to the lender. So once the credit certificate is in the borrower's hand, they can use it when they file their taxes to take the credit. So how do you determine which of your borrowers are eligible? As I said previously, this is really almost exclusively the same universe of folks that you would be qualifying for our first-time home buyer, first home program. The eligibility requirements fall into 3 categories: the types of eligible financing that they can be using, the buyer or borrower eligibility, and the property eligibility. And I'll get into more detail about what that means. But we'll start with the financing. And really the financing is one key difference. Obviously with the first home program you have to use the first home mortgage, first mortgage. In the case of the mortgage credit certificate, you can use really any of the products that you're currently offering your home buyers, your borrowers. You can offer it with Homes for Iowans as well, and also with the down payment, the Homes for Iowans Plus. It can be offered in conjunction with the military homeownership grant and any other financing that you offer, as I said before. There is really only one type of loan that it cannot be used with, and that is our first home program. And the reason for that, again, and we'll kind of go back to that framework I tried to outline for you earlier, is coming from the same part of the tax code and the same pot of funds that are used to fund first mortgage assistance. And so the federal government would view this as sort of a double dipping. So it can't be used with our first home or our first home plus programs. But that's really the only product that is forbidden. So that makes it pretty easy for you. Which kinds of borrowers can qualify? Really, it is, again, the same kind of group. It's the first-time homebuyers, which would be defined as someone not owning their primary residence in the last 3 years, a military veteran discharged other than dishonorably with no previous participation in a mortgage revenue bond program, or a home buyer purchasing a home that's in a targeted area. So they have to meet one of those 3 requirements. And then in addition, they have to be income eligible. So how do we verify that they qualify as either a first-time buyer or an exempt veteran? Well, typically it's the last 3 years of the federal tax return for the first-time buyer. If their address in the last tax return is different, if their current address is different from the one in their last tax return, there may also be some requirements for verification of rent. That doesn't come up very often, but it does occasionally. And then sometimes in the case of a divorce where there's ownership issues at stake, we may be looking at a divorce decree if it's within the last 3 years. So there's a few documents that you may need to provide, but typically it is the tax returns that do the trick. Again, for exempt veteran, we would have the borrower certify that they have not used a tax-exempt bond program in the past. That's our MCC1, which looks very eerily like our B1, the Mortgage Revenue Bond Program. And then there is a DD-214 that we verification form from the VA that we use to verify discharge status. Again, just note that this applies as well to new Americans, and so sometimes this can be an issue in terms of being able to document and tax returns if there are people new to this country. But there may be other ways you can do that, so you just need to touch base with us if you're working actively in immigrant communities. The borrower income eligibility guidelines, they're set annually for each county by household size, and this table just shows you kind of the low end and the high end, so you can kind of get a ballpark range. Of course, the borrower's income needs to be at or below the limit for the county in which they're purchasing the home. And just be, again, aware that these are the exact same limits that are in place now for our first home program. So when you go to our website and look for qualifying information, there will be one column and it will say first home / take credit, and those income limits will apply universally. So income is defined for purposes of qualifying for the mortgage credit certificate as all family income, and includes the borrower, the spouse, other title holders, and the spouse of any title holder. And we are looking at a 12-month projected income, and we do include all court-ordered income, even if it's not received. So this will be different from what you may be looking at for underwriting purposes. When you're trying to make sure you have sufficient repayment income, you might exclude certain types of income. because you only want to count on what you know is coming in, whereas for our case, we're looking at it to make sure they meet the IRS guidelines in the most optimistic sense. So, then we know we're safe that we won't have an ineligible household getting approved. So it is a little different look. It may result in a little extra documentation in some cases that we may request of you. But generally speaking, if you collect income documentation at the time of your loan application, you'd submit that to ISA, and we would usually find that sufficient. So just be aware of there's just a slight difference in the way we look at it. I think it's pretty standard. Most of those of you that have worked with us, these are all the same kinds of things that are included as income. It's typically wages, child support, income from assets. It does not include, we do not include in income any scholarships or grants if they are restricted to tuition and books. Combat pay is also excluded, and lump sum funds or amounts are not considered income. So an inheritance lump sum would not be counted as projected. We wouldn't project that they would expect to receive that in the next year. However, if they had a lump sum sitting in a bank account, it would probably fall into the category of income from assets, and that's how we would end up looking at it, is what income it was generating in terms of interest or dividends, that type of thing, but not the lump sum itself. We verify this in much the same way that you would verify other, income for repayment purposes using W-2s, tax returns, just, third-party verifications of various types. And I think most of these are all familiar to you, so I won't belabor the point. When you're calculating it, again, pretty straightforward. Any kind of weekly income, you're going to multiply by 52, biweekly 26. We're looking for an annual projection is the point. We want to take each source, annualize it, and then total them. And when you want to compare the projected income to the income limits of the applicable county, and then if it's below that limit, your borrower would be considered income eligible. So you've crossed that threshold at that point. Now we're moving into property eligibility. So your borrower, you've already determined, meets the status, first-time homebuyer or veteran, whatever, and income eligible. Now you want to know, does the property qualify? Well, we have some pretty generous purchase price limits. If the property is located within a targeted area, it's going to be $305,000, and in a non-targeted area, $250,000. Again, these are the same limits that apply in our first home program, so you'll see them reflected on the spreadsheet on our website as one number for both, and that's correct. I think that's pretty generous. Most of the time this has not been an issue, but one thing to bear in mind is that purchase price or acquisition cost is not always exactly as the number that ends up on the purchase agreement for various reasons, but we are looking at acquisition costs as defined in the IRS guidelines as in-kind or seller benefits, such as non-tax proration would have to be included in it. If a buyer is, for whatever reason, purchasing personal property for greater than the value of it, that additional incremental amount would need to be added to the acquisition cost. Any cost that's being incurred to complete the home, except for those that are attributed to the buyer's labor, would need to be included. And the cost of a lot, if it's new construction, if a lot has been owned for less than 2 years, needs to also be factored in. So once you add up all those things all in, the acquisition costs need to be less than the purchase price limit, again, for the targeted or non-targeted area, depending on where the property is located. What we'd be looking at and having you upload into our system to document the eligibility of property would be the purchase agreement and any addenda that reference documents. If there's personal property included in that purchase agreement, there would need to be a disinterested third-party valuation of it so we can be aware of that. Any documentation of costs needed to make improvements and complete the property, or again, for new construction, documentation of the lot purchase if on less than 2 years, and typically we're also getting the appraisal. So once you've done all your eligibility docs and loaded them up, we have a process. As you are familiar with from our loan processing, the lender takes the loan application similarly to our other programs. Lender then has access to our online system called Lender Online and can use that system to reserve either a loan or a loan plus MCC. They are two separate reservations, so if you are using the Homes for Islands First Mortgage along with the down payment assistance, you need to reserve that separately and then make a second reservation for the Take Credit program. Just a slight limitation of the software for us. But once you've done that, the lender can upload compliance review documents. Should be done no less than 5 business days prior to closing. That gives our staff enough time to take a look at it and provide you with any conditions that should be met. Then, assuming all those conditions are satisfied, IFA would issue a notice of commitment for the credit, and that should be in place before the loan closes. This is a little different from our other process in that you're allowed to do a closing without having a final sign-off from IFA, but in this case, we really recommend that that notice of commitment be in place before closing. After closing, we give the lenders in our process 30 calendar days to deliver a closed loan package and upload it. IFA will review it, and then if all is the same or looks adequate, then IFA would issue that mortgage credit certificate to the mortgagor and copy the lender. So some things you might want to keep in mind as you're processing a file is, the separate reservation, as I indicated. You may want to also be bearing in mind the time frames. We do have an expiration on the reservation after 60 days. Be also aware that we're not going to be looking at the underwriting. You just want to follow your typical underwriting procedures and stay in accordance with any agency guidelines for the loan type that you're using. Be sure you have that commitment notice from IFA in hand prior to closing. And that notice will also have an expiration attached to it. So for an existing home, it would be a 60-day commitment, and for a new construction product, it would be 120 days. So you just want to double check that before closing to make sure it has not expired, because if it does, you would need a reissuance from IFA just to be sure that there are still funds available. Post-close tips when you're processing, just again being aware that, as I mentioned at the outset, we are setting aside a limited amount of resource for this program. So we can make adjustments to your commitment level if you've changed the loan amount or so forth, but we have to have the capacity to do that. So if you have a commitment, that's the amount that we know we have available, and if something changes after that, it could be increased, but if no funds are available, then we would be stuck with the max that we committed. So you just want to keep that in mind as we get towards the end of the program. You will also want to be sure that your borrower can really benefit from this program, to spend some time with them explaining how to use the credit, how to maybe make adjustments to their W-4s to make sure that they have the correct withholdings and can benefit from that if they choose during the course of the tax year, rather than waiting till the end and getting a bigger refund, that type of thing. So if you educate your borrowers every year at tax time, they will think of you with great fondness because they will get a huge benefit, and that's our goal. And we want to be, working together with you mutually to help Iowans, and I know that's the goal of most of you as well. So with that, I wanted to have Beth Mahaffey, our Business Development Director, talk you through really more of the detail of a borrower's benefit and lay it out for you. We're going to show you an example here on the screen, and then she's going to pull up some documents, some actual tax forms examples that she's done. And she has great tax background and experience, so I think she's the best one to cover it, and I will turn it over to Beth.
Good afternoon. This example is, I just want you to keep in mind, this is an example for you to show to your potential borrowers. This is a very simple example, and we have mentioned that if someone needs a more intricate example, we will be glad to do that in the future. This particular example assumes a $90,000 certified indebtedness at 4.5% interest. And as you can see, the only difference becomes after the tax liability, at the 4.5% interest, excuse me, you have $4,050 worth of mortgage interest deduction. Obviously, the MCC is at 50%, So you would think you could get the $4,025 or the $2,025, but it is capped at $2,000. So if you look here, you can see the difference with the MCC, with the $2,000 credit, and without the MCC, there is no credit, and that reduces the income tax liability by the full $2,000 in this instance. Now I'm going to show you the same example on the actual 1040 income tax return. Okay, so here we have the typical 1040. Again, we didn't add in any interest or any kind of 1099 income. This is a very simple example. So we have $50,000 worth of W-2 wages, and we'll go down to page 2, where you see that the $2,000 credit comes in from Form 8396, which I will go to. Again, reducing the liability from the $5,331 to the $3,031. And that number comes from this Form 8396, which your borrower's tax preparer will fill out for them, or they will fill out for themselves. Again, for the $90,000 loan at 4.5% interest, the total mortgage interest for the year was $4,050. At the cap, they get the $2,000 credit. As you can see, the liability is limited to the $5,331, but again, we have the cap of $2,000. So we're going back to page 2. That $2,000 goes back into line 53 of the 1040 and reduces the liability down to $3,331. Now I'll show you the same tax return without the credit. I do want everyone to notice here in part 2 of the 8396, this is where, as Deb mentioned, there is a 3-year carry forward for any credit that doesn't have an offsetting liability. So if your individual only has $1,500 of a liability in a given year, and they have this scenario where they had $2,000 worth of credit, they could carry that $500 forward to the next year, or the next. They have 3 years to use that up. So this is where that carry forward would come in. Here is the same example, as I mentioned, without the MCC. And these forms will be posted eventually on our website. So you'll be able to access those and use them for demonstration to your borrowers. So we're going down. As you see, again, the same liability of $5,331, no credit, so they still owe the IRS $5,331. And no 8396 because there's no credit. The next example I'm going to show you is using the same variables. However, we have added withholding. And the reason that we did this is because some individuals have questions regarding the difference between a tax liability and withholding, when in fact withholding is really just a prepayment of their taxes. So this is just an easy way to demonstrate to them that the credit only affects their liability, and in the end it will just increase the amount that they are paid back or decrease that liability they have to pay in. So same scenario, $50,000 of W-2 wages, same liability of $5,331. Again, their liability is decreased to $3,331, but in this instance they had withholding of $7,500. So they get $4,169 is the amount that they would get back because of that withholding. Again, we're really just focusing on the liability, but you can compare this to a tax return. There's the same 8396. It'll be exactly the same. To compare it to a tax return, again, $7,500 withholding, but no MCC. And you will see that in this case, they only get $2,169 because they don't get the $2,000 credit back. I do want to mention that this is not a refundable credit. Obviously, that's why you can carry it forward. Therefore, if you have no liability, this is just an offset to a liability. So it's not a refundable credit where they would get the money back if they don't have a tax liability. But they can carry it forward for 3 years. Now this example is for you to demonstrate to your borrowers how they can change their withholding if they would like to. Here is a W-4, And what we did here was I will show you, we'll go on to publication 919, worksheet 8. And this publication from the IRS explains to you how to convert any credits to withholding allowances. And as you know, as withholding allowances go up, your withholding goes down. So in this case, we took the $2,000 credit, and with our sample, this gentleman made $50,000, and he was single. So his credit multiplier is 4, which brings you down to $8,000. Now we're going back to page 2 of the W-4. And here he gets his standard deduction of $5,950. And then here's where the $8,000 comes forward from that $919. And then you have to divide that by the exemptions, so by the $3,800. And here's where you see that you get your additional allowances. You get 2 more because of the credit from the MCC. So he had 3 allowances already. Here he gets an additional 2 from the MCC for a total of 5, which comes over here to line 5 of the W-4, therefore allowing continued disposable income throughout the year. Now, it depends on your individual borrower. They may not want to increase their withholding. They may want to decrease their withholding. In all actuality, because you're using a table, this is not an exact science for the allowances, but it is the best method that the IRS has at this point for converting credits to allowances. And again, these forms will be on the website if you want to use them for examples in the future. I'm going to pass it back to Deb.
Thank you, Beth. That's great. I appreciate that. I think that's very helpful to see. And again, having this on our website, it might be a little quick to go through it for anyone that's not a tax expert, but
oh no, you want to get some parents.
But here we are back at the presentation, and this was just a review of what Beth just talked about. Moving on, though, there are just a few additional items that would need to be done in terms of your compliance for the Take Credit program, and it's very similar to the kinds of thing you have to do for the First Home program. In the First Home program, we have what we call MRB docs, and there are 4 of them. In the MCC or Take Credit program, we have MCC docs, and instead of 4, there are 3. So you save 1 piece of paper. But basically, it's just the affidavit of purchaser. We are naming that the MCC-01. It will look very much like the MRB-01. It's to document first-time homebuyer status, income eligibility, purchase price eligibility, and or the exempt veteran status, depending on the type of borrower we're talking about. It also has something on targeted area buyers. The MCC-02 is just like the MRB-02, and it is a recapture notice, and that is a point to make a note that this program also is subject to recapture tax should the borrower sell prematurely. And then there is the MCC-03, the seller affidavit, which again looks very much like the MRB-03. So these are documents that will look very familiar, but they are labeled with the MCC, and there are just a few tweaks to them, but much the same. As again, it's covered by the same part of the tax code. There are a few additional reporting and record-keeping requirements for the lender, and those are outlined in the agreement that we have put out for lenders to sign up. So you may see these in there, but the forms that are required is an IRS form. It's a 1-page form with a page of instructions going with it. And the basic information that you need to retain in order to complete that form are the borrower's name, address, social security number, the name, address, and TIN of IFA, some mortgage information on the date of closing, the amount of the loan, and the credit rate, which is going to be 50% currently. So it's a pretty minimal amount of information that needs to be retained, but there is a 6-year record maintenance requirement and regulations relating to that. So it's just a point for you to be aware of, and there will be an annual submission as it states on reporting, and that goes to the IRS. We wanted to talk a little bit about lender compensation and fees as well, and just in general, I would just say that if you're making a loan to a borrower, you can charge any of the normal and customary fees that you would charge to apply for financing and process a financing application. There is, in addition to that, a one-time MCC fee permitted for up to $200 to defray the cost of actually administering the MCC component of their loan. And the lender fees that are charged are, there is an annual lender participation fee of $100 per branch. That came out and was described hopefully well enough in the lender invitation that was sent out right before Thanksgiving. And then in addition, that MCC fee of $200, $100 of it needs to be sent to IFA after closing by the lender to cover IFA's costs associated with processing the MCC. And the exception to that is if the MCC is requested in conjunction with an IFA mortgage. So if it's used with an Homes for Islands first mortgage, then IFA will waive the remittance of that $100 for that borrower. Signing up for the program to participate is very easy. There are no real capital requirements or anything like that for lenders because we aren't really talking about anything that's securing financing. It's just a requirement that lenders be legally operating within the state and then submit an executed lender participation agreement. They're now available on our website, and that fee of $100 per branch that you'd like to have listed, and that will be then those branches that are signed up will be made available to any borrower that would like to know where they can go to get assistance with applying for a mortgage credit certificate. So the sign up can be sent directly to me at IFA, and we'll get you signed up. And now I wanted to turn it over to Sherry Crone, and she's going to just give a quick demonstration of Lender Online, and we do have more comprehensive Lender Online training for those of you that have never used that system. But today, for the purposes of this presentation, we thought we would just walk you through the little add-on feature that we've made for mortgage credit certificates. And then you can access a fuller presentation on our website if you are not familiar with the system in general. But just to keep things concise today, we thought we'd do that, and then we'll be able to open it up for questions after Sherry has gone through this short demo. So Sherry, without further ado, I'd like you to take us through it.
All righty. Well, if you're familiar with Lender Online, you are familiar with the tabs that you see here. Just like you do when you make an IFA mortgage reservation, you're going to click on the New Reservation tab, and you see all of your loan products here, along with the military grant here. And now, once you become a participating lender, you will also be able to see this mortgage credit certificate link. So if you click on that and you would like to reserve the mortgage credit certificate, you're going to click on the Take Credit. Now, Deb mentioned earlier that you will, if you are using an IFA mortgage product, you're going to make 2 reservations. So you would make your first reservation here in the Homes for Islands section. If you have a military grant, you're going to make your military reservation here. And then if you are also using the mortgage credit certificate, you are going to register that as well. So when you click on that Take Credit 2013 link, it's going to take you to the reservation form, which just looks just like what you're used to using. So that will be here for you. Your loan type in this section is going to be MCC. Your loan amount will be the loan amount. You're going to select your number of terms. And your interest rate here, you're actually going to key in. You're used to a drop-down box in the other products, but in here you're actually going to key in your mortgage or your interest rate. You're going to continue to fill it out. Asterisks are required fields, as always, and when you're finished, you're going to use the Submit button at the bottom of the page. You will get the same screen that tells you your reservation has been accepted. And once you have that, you can move on to the Loan Status tab. The Loan Status tab is where you are going to be able to view your reservation. A Take Credit reservation is going to begin with an 800 number. We currently don't have one here in the system, but we're going to use a first home loan just for demonstration purposes. So if you had a mortgage credit certificate, it would start with a number 800. You would have your 4 action buttons here. Your view button is exactly where you're going to go to review any conditions and to look at your status, just like you would with the first home or Homes for Iowans loan. Your reprint button is going to give you the reservation. Your PDF docs is going to contain the fillable version of your MCC forms that you need. MCC 01, 02, and 03, as well as post-close and pre-close transmittals. So you have that available for you. You're going to submit documents through the eDocs button here, just as you would any other loan. And up in Program Documents, you will also have generic copies of all of those forms that you need that will be blank. They will pre-fill based on the reservation information. Here in Program Documents, we have placed the Mortgage Credit Certificate Program Guide, which is, in Bulletin Board, we've placed the program guide as well as the lender email, the lender invitation, and the lender agreement that are all out there for you to review and sign up if you would like to do that. As always, you log out of the system with the logout link here. And that is all that I have for today. So we can open it up to questions.
Yeah, we will try to get back to our presentation and then open up for questions. And we are down to the end here, so I'll have that navigate to the question and answer options. Oh, looks like Tiffany has a question. Is there a mute? Okay, so Tiffany, you're there. We have opened up the mic for you, and did you have a question?
Will the recapture be reimbursed?
That is such a great question, Tiffany. We have not received authorization for that at this point from our board, and so I will say not at this point in time. And we're reviewing it to decide whether it's something we can do. The issue with it is that we won't have a loan outstanding, and where we typically generate revenue, there will be no ongoing revenue stream from this program, and so it's a little different from our ability to make that commitment for first mortgage or for first home program. So we haven't received approval for that yet, so no today. Thank you for that question.
Are they required to take a first-time homebuyer class?
No, we do not have a first-time homebuyer education requirement. Okay. Any other questions, Tiffany?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Then I have a question from Bill. Are you ready to question, Bill?
Yes. Is there a restriction, or when can the purchase agreement be written? In other words, do they have to wait till January? What about if somebody writes a purchase agreement this week?
Well, we're really not basing it on when the purchase agreement is written. What a lender will need to have in hand before they go to closing is a commitment notice. So theoretically, a purchase agreement needs to be in place ahead of reserving the funds. Once the funds are reserved and the documents are uploaded, IPA needs 5 days to review it and put conditions in place. And then the lender, if everything is good, theoretically within 5 days, a commitment notice could be sent. And at that point, you can close any time. So it's kind of contingent on, when the documents are uploaded to IPA and when they're complete.
Okay, so Yeah, it does. So there's not a restriction on the date of the purchase agreement. Theoretically, or actually, when can you start registering this, assuming that our bank or company is registered?
So once the bank signs up for the program and submits their participation agreement and check and fee to IFA, we then open up the reservation system to that lender. That's when they can go in and upload the documents, and after the documents are uploaded, we need 5 days, and after that, they can really close any time.
Perfect. Thank you.
See, we'll look and see if anyone else has questions. Okay. I think we have tried to unmute Gary. Looks like Gary has a question. Gary, it doesn't look like we have a phone connection with you, and so maybe if you would like to send your question via chat, we can address it that way. Or if you'd like to call in. With a pin. Oh, there's a question. Can you slow it down with this here? Let me. Can the family's income who qualifies use homes for Iowans in order to take advantage of the MCC? Yes. I think I understand that question. It is saying whether or not, the question that I'm reading is whether a family who qualifies for first home can actually use homes for Iowans instead, just in order to take advantage of the MCC. And the answer to that is most likely yes, because if they meet the first home income and purchase price limits, they will by default be under the homes for Iowans limit, which is higher. So they should qualify for both. They are not a mutually exclusive group, so pretty much anyone who qualifies for first home will fall within the umbrella of homes for Iowans, and that should not be an issue. But they do still need to be the first-time home buyer and meet those more strict requirements for the Take Credit program. But yes, they can use the IFA first mortgage through the homes for Iowans, and even if they qualify for the first home program. Are there any other questions? So you can sign up for Take Credit anytime. I think Sherry just showed you, if you haven't received it by email, I did send out the lender agreement and invitation right before Thanksgiving, and so if it didn't get to the right person in your organization, you want to make sure that gets shepherded through and back to us. That can be submitted at any time, and as soon as we get it, we will open up the reservation for your office. Let's see, I'm going to try to go through these. What are the terms of recapture, and has anything ever been recaptured with IFA? The terms of the recapture are really the same as for the first home program, and it's a pretty detailed explanation. So the form that describes it is on our website already, and it's selling within, I think, Sherry, maybe you know it off the top of your head, within 9 years. If you sell your home within 9 years and you realize a gain from the sale and your household income increases more than 5% per year above the loan limit in effect at the time the loan closes, then you may be subject to recapture tax. So it's the same criteria. So it's all those three things have to apply before that hits. We don't have record of anyone having been hit with it in our programs. It's a pretty rare instance, as I understand it. So if it's happening, it's something that's not being reported or recognized as a major issue for folks. But we don't really have any data on anyone that's been affected by it through IFA. And since we've offered reimbursement, we've not been requested to pay anything. For assumption eligibility, the loan would have to be assumable for the mortgage to be assumed. And yes, that is correct. Will we have a handout pamphlet for lenders to give to realtors and buyers? Yes, we actually are working on a whole new slate of brochures for all of our programs, and among them will be a Take Credit brochure that can be handed out separately or together with other information about IFA programs, and we will make that available for all of our partners out there. And so thank you for asking. We do hope to have that out shortly after the first of the year. We're tweaking some other things about our programs and want to get everything in there so we don't have to print them again. And a printed copy of the slideshow, you can actually, we can print it from the website. We can just put the PowerPoint on our website and then you can print it from there. Just click on and print your slideshow that way. I think those are all the questions. Oh, let's see, maybe. Where were you in there? We're going to just double check and see if we have any other questions from callers that we need to unmute. Okay. It looks like we have a question from Dee. Dee, we've unmuted you if you have a question. Is Dee there? Okay, I haven't. That was just a question of number, wasn't it? Try Dee again. Sure. Okay, well, we're trying to unmute Dee. Is Dee there to ask a question? Maybe we answered it. Maybe we answered it. Okay, well, I don't see any other questions here. I would just say that if there are other questions, you know, feel free to send an email to me or Sherry, and this is available. This presentation is going to be available on our website as soon as we conclude. We will post it out there. And our email addresses are at the last page, so you can always find that. And we're more than happy to help walk you through any questions or any information needs that you might have. With that, thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you all have a great afternoon.